So yeah, let me turn the night on for you. Another real deep lyrical type situation that was written by Doc Hammer. So part two. Trying to think what part one was. Part two, burnt brain cells, kick in, part two. So we started playing as the Sizzle Brothers, waiting for Dave to come back. And in this video I found some old footage from a practice place we used to have in Waukesha. A lot of bands used to practice in this place. I think they used to call it the Sanctuary. So we started practicing there, me, John, and Gary. And then John and Gary ended up finding a house for all of us to live in. It was located on 12th and Layton, right across the street from Martino's Hot Dogs, in front of a veterinarian clinic. That house might have a complete video on its own about that house. We used to call it the Hammer House. So me, Gary, and John are living in this house, waiting for Dave to come back. And Dave comes back, he moves into the house. Now we're all living at the house, we're practicing and, you know, getting ready to bring out this project. I believe I'd already come up with the name Doc Hammer. That I came up with, I was going to visit a friend in East St. Louis, right outside of East St. Louis. And he was a semi-truck driver. He came and picked me up at my house and we were driving down there. And at the time, there was a movie called Doc Hollywood with Michael J. Fox, Doc Hollywood. And I just thought, wow, that's a kind of a cool title, Doc Hollywood. And also at the time, wow, I'm sweating. It's very hot in my shop. And also there was that Miami Vice show was on, and the guy that wrote the music for Miami Vice, his name was Jan Hammer. And I forgot why they were talking about him on the radio, but they were talking about this Jan Hammer guy. And they also mentioned, or I saw a billboard for the movie Doc Hollywood. So, I don't know, I just started thinking Doc Hollywood, Jan Hammer, Doc Hammer, Doc Hammer, Doc Hammer. I started saying it over and over, and I turned to my friend and I said, hey, what do you think of this name for a band, Doc Hammer? He's like, yeah, I kind of like it, man. It sounds pretty cool. It kind of rolls. It's got all the elements of a cool band name. So that's how I came up with the name Doc Hammer. And so anyhow, back to, we're all living together in the house, and we continued to play out as the Sizzle Brothers to not only pay our rent at the house, but also to kind of fine-tune what we were doing. We would do songs as the Sizzle Brothers that we thought would work, and see if they worked with the Sizzle Brothers, we were going to use them with Doc Hammer. And also we were playing as the Sizzle Brothers. I've always kind of struggled with my weight. I've always had a weight problem my entire life. And at this point in time, I was pretty heavy. I think I was at like 265, something like that. And I know this kind of sounds kind of weird or whatever, but Dave was very adamant about me losing weight if we were going to do this band thing. I had played with Dave and John in the band Thrill Seeker, and I wasn't as heavy as I was. Well, what had happened was I was doing a lot of cocaine at the time. And I had quit doing cocaine for a while, and I put on all this weight. And Dave's like, hey man, you gotta lose some weight. So what did the band do? The band paid for me to go on Jenny Craig to lose weight. And so we were playing as the Sizzle Brothers, and I wasn't supposed to drink alcohol, and I wasn't supposed to eat certain foods or whatever. And I remember when we'd be playing at this bar called Doers on Water. There's a lot of stories there too. Doers on Water, I used to have one of those big plastic sippy cups, and I would hand them to one of the bar owners, Peter Mucho. And he would fill it up with water, but then he'd take a bottle of Ouzo and he'd just like that. No one knew I was drinking, you know, Ouzo and water. So we're playing as the Sizzle Brothers at Doers on Water, and we also used to play this bar on Greenfield Avenue, 20-something in Greenfield, called Hot Streak. So I found some video from us playing at Hot Streak with Dave, and I also found this kooky video of me, John, and Gary practicing up in the Sanctuary band room. So I think that's where we're at right now. Dave moved back. We started jamming, getting things ready to to play out as Doc Hammer. So let's watch. So anyhow, I totally forgot. Rig rundown with Netty Stands. At this time, I believe I used to have this old 1972 100 watt super lead that sometimes worked, sometimes didn't work. Then I got this Fender M80, real cheap amp, but I would run into the M80 and then I would send the line out of the effects loop of the M80 into some kind of effects and then into the front of the Marshall 100 watt. So I know I was running that kind of a combination, so I was either using the M80 by itself or I was using it with the Marshall and a couple of cabs. Rig rundown with Netty Stands.